So this concept here, we have what's known as gross income or gross profit. So pretty simple equation here. Gross income is the difference between the sales of a business and the cost of inventory. We do not include any other expenses when we're calculating gross profit. So here we have an example. If a pharmacy sales were $529,473 and its purchases were $213,862, what would its gross profit be? So once again, we just take the difference between the sales and the cost of inventory here, which would leave us with $315,611. So let's take a look at a couple examples here from the book. Okay, I am on page 465 looking at practice problems E. I'm going to look at number 2 here. A pharmacy sells $25,420 a week with monthly cost of inventory of $19,986. What is the gross profit? So when you're reading these problems, read through them carefully here because we see sales per week with cost of inventory for the month. So how I can change this into a monthly rate would be to take this amount times 4 because there are 4 weeks in a month. And it says that here in our directions. I know not every month is exactly 4 weeks, but that's what we go with when we're doing these business calculations here. So let's take 25,420 times 4. That's going to give us our monthly sales. And I'm left with 101,680. Now we're calculating gross profit. So remember, sales minus inventory. So we're going to subtract out 19,986. And I am left with 81,694 as my gross profit. So once again, don't include any other expenses in our gross profit calculations. Okay, now I'm looking at number 5 on page 466. So the bank requests the gross profit of a store for a quarter. The sales are $65,432 per month, and inventory costs are $64,120 per month. What is the gross profit for the quarter? So if we think about a year, there are 12 months in a year, and we're looking for the quarter. So if we were to divide 12 by 4, which would give us the month divided into 4 equal parts or quarters, the year divided into quarters, we would have 3 months in each quarter. So when we're calculating the gross profit for the quarter, we need to take both of our monthly amounts here and multiply them by 3 because there are 3 months in a quarter. So sales, we have 65,432. I'm going to take that times 3. So I'm left with 196,296. That were my quarterly sales. And then I'm going to do the same thing for my inventory costs. This is per month. I want per the quarter, which is 3 months. So 64,120 times 3 leaves me with 192,360. That was my inventory for the quarter. So remember, sales minus inventory will leave us with our gross margin. So 196,296 minus 192,360 leaves me with a gross profit of $3,936. Okay, so remember with gross income, we don't include any other expenses. Now it's important to keep the difference between gross income and net income straight. So make sure you understand these equations here. So when we calculate net income, we do now include all of those other costs of running the business. So the net income is actually how much the business is actually making at the end of the period in which we're calculating for. So net income, we're going to still take all of our sales, and we're also going to subtract out the inventory just as we did with gross income, but we're also going to subtract all of the other expenses, what we mentioned earlier as our overhead. So if you'd like, you can, in a sense, basically calculate up all of the expenses first and then subtract them from the sales. Or if your question is asking for, both the gross income and the net income, you can find the gross first, which would be sales minus inventory, and then just further subtract out the overhead, which is all of the other expenses. So once again, really make sure you understand the difference between the gross income equation and the net income equation. Net income is discussed on page 466 in the book as well, followed by a good example here. So let's take a look at this real quick together. So a pharmacy has sales of $425,000, inventory purchases of $310,000, salaries and wages $60,000, utilities $2,500, insurance $1,100, and maintenance $775. What is the gross income? So remember, gross is just sales minus inventory. So if we look back here, our sales 425,000, our inventory 310,000. So we would just find the difference between those two numbers. Now it says, what is the overhead for the month? So remember, overhead is all of the costs of doing business that does not include inventory. So we don't include inventory in our overhead. So here we have taken all of the other expenses here. Ignore the inventory. We don't care about sales. We're going to take the wages, utilities, insurance, and maintenance here. Add all of those together to find the extra expenses of doing business aside from our inventory. And then when we're calculating net income, remember we're taking the sales minus everything, minus all of the cost of doing business. But since we've already calculated our gross income here and our overhead, we can use that simplified equation here by just taking our gross minus our overhead, which would leave us with $50,625. Okay, I'm looking at number 4 on page 468. So a retail pharmacy has sales of $174,080, inventory $146,220, salaries and wages $16,200, utilities $1,950, rent $1,400, insurance $800, and repairs for $270. What is the gross income? So remember, gross income is just sales minus inventory. So we're going to take our sales minus our inventory. So these are all for the month. None of these are weekly, so we should be good to go here. So inventory, 146,220. So that's going to give us our gross income or our gross profit. All right, so I get 27,860 as my gross. Now it says, what is the overhead for the month? Remember, overhead, all of the expenses of doing business, but does not include the inventory. So we're not going to worry about our sales. That's our profit. We're not going to worry about our inventory. We're just going to worry about all of these other expenses here. So we're going to add those up together. So we have 16,200, utilities of 1,950, rent 1,400, insurance 800, and repairs of 270. So that will leave us with our overhead, 16,200 plus 1,950 plus 1,400 plus 800 plus 270. Leaves me with $20,620, and that is my overhead. And then lastly, we have the net income. So if we didn't already calculate the gross and the overhead, what we could do with our net income would just be to take our sales and subtract out all of the other expenses here. So we would take $174,080 and subtract out all of these expenses. But since we have our gross and we have our overhead, remember net income is just the gross minus the overhead. So we can subtract these two numbers here. So we have 27,860 minus 20,620. So let's see what that leaves us with. I get a net income of $7,240. So if you're wanting some more practice with both gross income, net income, and overhead, Practice Problems F is a good place to do some more work on those calculations.